Hi, everybody. Running a bit late again today because, live shows and all that. And I don't have a producer. I just got two dogs who had to pee right at the end of, the working day. So anyway, how is everybody? Hope everybody's having a nice Wednesday so far. Welcome back to another WineShark Wednesday with your host, WineShark. We are going to be talking about clean wine today and some skinny white girls and a bunch of other cool stuff. It's going to be wild and fun and a crazy ride. So things that have been updates, things that have been going on. To be honest with you, not a ton. I've been working on this little research project for the last week or so. Several articles came across my professional news feeds in various ways and kind of got me interested. There was a lot of industry hype back in July and August, and so this is something that I feel pretty strongly about. So we're going to talk about that. We're back in the moderately undisclosed location because, well, reasons, and I just didn't want to set up the fake brick wall today. So, I can do me. But I hope everybody's having a great week. Things seem to at least smooth down around here weather-wise. It's been actually kind of rainy and nicely cool for the almost trying to make us forget that it's still technically summer here. It's been a reasonable temperature, which is pretty rare for this time of year in Texas. So anyhow, this has been a fairly good and productive week. I cannot complain. So anyway, I hope you guys are doing well, and I hope you guys got yourself something to drink. I'm going to grab myself some of my example wine today from my grocery store grab. So we'll get going. We'll dive right in. So let's talk about the clean wine movement. This is a kind of needed definition to begin with. Clean wine, as we're defining it here, is what we're talking about is wine that's made using standard winemaking practices, but is marketed using terminology and customer ignorance to piggyback the multi-billion-dollar wellness market. Okay, that's not to be confused with natural wine. Natural wines is a movement that is a few years old that are wines made using retro-style winemaking techniques to reproduce styles of winemaking from the past. These are sometimes called minimal intervention wines or things like that. But some of the claims for benefit are very similar to what you're going to hear, but they're actually a very different, much more legitimate thing than the clean wine crap we're going to be talking about today. So I don't want to get those topics confused. I'm very pro natural wine, although it's not my particular jam. I don't enjoy them as much. They're not my style of wine. What they are is they're a subset of wine styles in reality. And so there's a lot of people doing really cool stuff in that market that I do not want to detract from. However, we're going to really be focusing on the main concept of marketing to ignorance and defense against the dark arts as a wine shark and as a person who, it all listens to what the hell I have to say for exactly what that's worth. So the show is going to be split into two parts because there's lots to unpack here. I mean, lots. I've read, probably 36 articles and watched at least, I'd probably say 4 videos and at least and a couple of 5 different websites from different companies, all talking about topics, both pro and con for this. So it's been very interesting. So anyhow, it's hello there, Miss Boswell and Mr. Mark, Southern California. Ooh, getting back to hot up again down your way. Well, that's no fun. So 2 parts of the show. Like I said, there's lots to unpack. Today, we're going to talk about what's in the wine generally. So we're going to talk about sugar, sulfites, hangovers, and vegans. And then next week, we're going to talk about farming. We'll talk about wine production methods. We'll talk about marketing and lifestyle. And because there's so much stuff and so many facets to this that it's just going to take that amount of time. And I may even do deep dives or particular one-off videos, re-recording individual parts of this because I feel that strongly that people need to be armed with this knowledge. Because frankly, the whole thing of this, as I said, is marketing to consumer ignorance. It is the lack of knowledge about how wine is made that allows these winemakers to make claims that get attraction to people in the market who don't understand the fact that what they're saying is either not all the way true or is true for every wine. They're just not saying every wine. So, well, Donna says she's had rain but no electricity. Well, that's no fun at all. That's absolutely abysmal. I mean, especially because it's not cool enough to have not electricity. And I said it's cooler, but it's still kind of muggy outside. That'd be kind of gross. Don't want to have that. So I'm glad you're back on and restored here, as I can tell by your internet connection. Unless you've just fled home just to see me, which would be really cool. So we're going to talk about these 4 parts today, and we're going to talk about them in the claims that people make and the facts as they come through. I'm not going to be talking specifically today. I'm meant to mention a few names of some of the people that are in this clean wine movement. We're talking about things like there's the dry wines. There's a brand called Wonderful Wines or Wink. There's Scout and Cellar. There's a brand from is Aveline, which is the new recently launched brand by Cameron Diaz and her friend. All of these wines are the ones that we're talking about that are playing into this clean marketing deal. And I'll talk more about them, I think, in the marketing portion in the next show. Just understand that many of these wines make the similar claims. And so I bundled them all up into kind of topical based, kind of consumable bunches. Okay. So first things first is sugar. This is where I've seen advertisements, and in fact, I did a post on WineShark a little while back about this. I've seen these posts where they show your wine versus versus their wine, or consumer brand name wines versus their wines. And they're showing their wines have nothing but grapes in them, and they're showing that they have added sugar in them, right? So their claim: commercial wines have added sugar, and everybody knows that sugar is Satan spelled backwards in a mirror with a Ouija board. We've had a hard-on for sugar as an evil, bad thing for 40 years in this country, and it's bullshit, and it's wrong. But hey, they got to make sure that they got a market for selling you sugar-free stuff as well as stuff with sugar in it. So the fact is, sugar is 100% necessary for the creation of wine. And it comes in these nice little organic packets called grapes. Wine is made from these things. All wines have sugars in them. Period. End of statement. And dot without fail. It takes a lot of work to get a wine down to 0 residual sugar. Now, residual sugar is the amount of sugar that's left over in a wine after fermentation has occurred. Okay, so sugar is required for fermentation to get that alcohol. The fact that certain wines have less residual sugar in them is a product of the style of the wine being made. It is not in and of itself a virtue. Okay. Dry is the word we use in the wine world. And as some of you may have heard, I would wish we would change that, because the word dry doesn't describe the term very well, especially when we compare it to tannins, which make our mouths feel dry, but separate topic. So most dry wines are going to have less than 15 grams per liter of residual sugar. Most of these places are claiming that their wines are in that basic range. I would say far and away the bulk of commercial and popular wines are made in a dry style. Semi-sweet and sweet wines account for a very small percentage of the overall makeup of the wine world. And contrary to those Facebook ads, nobody's adding cane sugar or other sugar, adding it to your wine. The exception to this rule, the process, by the way, in wine world is called chapterization. The exception here is in the rare instances where natural sugars are added to increase fermentation to acceptable levels in certain cold climate growing regions. And even then, it's fairly rare. Okay, this doesn't happen a lot in the modern wine world. It's also illegal in California and several other places in the world because they don't want people messing with the alcohol by volume artificially, even though there are other things that you can do to tweak with that. Fact is, a few of these clean wines are actually claiming to be from California, or if they were, they'd have that pretty much sewn up because you can't add sugar to it anyway. I've seen examples where these people are from a lot of wines from Oregon, a lot of wines from Europe, but all over the place. And we'll talk about where they get their wines in the next show. But that's one of the suspect things is well, of course they're dry. I mean, that's just because you chose dry ones. Any consumer can do the same thing. Just look for the word dry. So this, again, isn't something special. They're using it and attempting to say our wines are good, their wines are bad because we have less sugar in them. Well, so what? Okay. I'm sorry, but that's not a bad thing. And more importantly, it's not the type of sugar that you're having a problem with anyway. So there you go. Hangovers. Okay. Clean wine loves to talk about how they will give you less of a hangover, that their juice somehow is clean and free of impurities. And these impurities, without that, well, you won't have a hangover. Fact: alcohol causes hangovers, period. Okay, I'll have to say more. Well, stop trying to blame anything but alcohol and your need for a buzz on your damned hangover. Okay? If you blame headaches or any on any other bullshit but alcohol, you're a moron. It's just clearly evidenced by science. Okay? Alcohol causes dehydration, it's a diuretic. It causes liver toxicity, which causes swelling, which causes another one, nausea, which causes a lot of other things. Alcohol is itself a toxin, so therefore, putting it in your body comes with consequences. Accept your consequences. If you feel the need to blame everything on your wine, on whether it's sulfites or impurities, or whether the day was wrong when it was picked, or who picked it, or where, you obviously can't take responsibility for your own drinking, and that means you get no WineShark drinking pass. You are forbidden from drinking with me or ever hanging out, because that level of stupidity is where regretful tattoos and bullshit calls to your ex and other stupidity begins. Okay? Just accept the fact that alcohol comes with this risk. And any anecdotal evidence that you give, well, I don't get hangovers when I drink that, whatever. Those things, I guarantee you, if you put them under clinical lab conditions, you will find there's a perfectly good reason for why you didn't get a hangover on time A, but you did on time B, or why you get headaches here versus there. Headaches are a process, but we talk about when we've spoken to this before. If you get wine headaches from certain types, brands of wine, especially, chances are what you're getting are allergen problems. You're having an issue with histamines, bioanamines. So don't blame it on the wine. Blame it on your body. Your body's a sensitive temple, we know. So there. Anyway, sulfites. Oh, another favorite of mine, yeast sulfites. So I've spoken about this before, probably at length, but we're going to do it again because we have to. Their claim: our wines have less sulfites, which is better because it doesn't cause headaches, etc., etc. They usually have claims that they're going to have 100 parts per million or less guaranteed of sulfites, with many of their wines below 50. Okay. Fact: most well-made wines imported or made in the United States have less or a range of 50 to 75 parts per million of sulfites, with a max at around about 200. The FDA legal limit is 350. So saying your wines are between 50 and 100 when everybody else is basically between 50 and 100 means you're same as pretty much everybody else. This is a classic example of marketing and understanding numbers without context. I mean, people always talk about, the lies that are within statistics. This is kind of an example of that, of how you spin things based on numbers. So let's put some numbers to context. Let's give you some. So how much sulfites are in things? I mean, first off, why is this bad? Why is there a sulfite warning label on every bottle of wine? Well, the FDA requires that the labeling of any wine in the United States having 10 parts or more per million must be labeled as having such. Why, you might ask? Well, because according to several sources, the current one that I have, the paper that I looked at during the research for this, was from the Australian Society of Clinical Immunology and Allergy. Asthmatics, specifically people who suffer from asthma symptoms, have about a 5 to 10% chance of having sulfite sensitivities. And these sulfite sensitivities can result in mild anaphylactic reactions or asthma-like reactions. That's not good. We like to be aware of that. One would want to know. However, as I've spoken about in the past, sulfite sensitivity is so infrequent that if you have a sulfite sensitivity, I almost guarantee you know it already or are under the care of a doctor. You didn't discover it when you picked up that glass of Merlot and suddenly got a headache. That wasn't how it fucking worked, and you know it. Here's the deal. Soda pop has about 200 parts per million of sulfites. Oh, you don't drink sodas? Okay. What about French fries? You like French fries? About 1,800 parts per million. We're talking about 18 times more than your average glass of wine. Oh, right. Forgot. Body is a temple. Perhaps you're, much more of a whole foods person. You only put in, say, dried fruit into your bodies. Dried fruit, 3,600 parts per million of sulfites. Sulfites are a naturally occurring preservative that happens during these processes. Dry potatoes, gravies, sauces, fruit toppings, maraschino cherries, pickled onions, maple syrup, jams, jellies, biscuits, bread, pizzas, pizza dough, and pies all contain sulfites. I guarantee you, it is not Kendall Jackson that caused this problem. Sulfites happen. They're a natural thing. And if you are sensitive, you are already reacting to it. It isn't this one-off weird calls thing. They do not cause your wine headaches. We talked about this just a moment ago, but let me say it again. Histamine reactions are most likely the source of your headaches, and they are because wine is an agricultural product, and it varies from winemaker to winemaker, not grape to grape. You're not allergic to Pinot Noir. You're allergic to that person's presentation of that wine and that Pinot Noir, okay? Well, we're going to get wound up over this one. I told you. So there's a difference between wine giving you a headache and drinking giving you a hangover. Oh, yes, that is absolutely true. Mary and David pointing out that this, and that's what I'm saying, is that wine headaches are often caused from histamine reactions, etc., not necessarily the hangover. These are two separate issues. Absolutely correct. And Tina says she's special like everybody else. That's right. You're going to be unique, just like your friends. Okay. Deep breath. Only a couple to go. That's right. Actually, only one left to go. We're not so bad. We're doing great. Doing great for time, too. So now it's time to make fun of vegans. Well, not vegans specifically, but people who advertise and make a big deal out of it. So the claim, our wines are vegan, and anyone knows that being a vegan makes you better than most people. Well, the fact is most wines already are vegan. They just don't bother to be pretentious enough to put it on their label. Okay. This is very similar to the gluten-free thing that happened for celiac disease a few years ago, where you started to see basically gluten-free advertising on products that were pretty much naturally gluten-free. My favorite example is, say, Tito's vodka, right? Well, it's a corn-based vodka that never had any gluten in it in the first place, but boy, is it gluten-free. I mean, that's like saying, carrots are fat-free. Okay, so are most vegetables. They don't contain fats. That's the thing. So saying it in that way, again, is askance because it makes you think that other wines are non-vegan. Now, in the past, and I mean, generally speaking, the far past, and in a very, very, very few niche situations, I'm looking at you, old school natural wine folks, or very few small production areas in the world, might still use animal products as part of the fining process of wine, a part of the clarification and filtering process. You'll see them say, there are no fish bladders in our wine. Ask anybody who works in a modern winery in the last 40 or 50 years if they've ever seen a fish bladder or any other gelatin or other such put in their wine. We use different methods now. We use chemical methods that are highly regulated and controlled, oftentimes in most are more similar to the medical industry for binding agents that bind to microscopic products to clarify your wine. Now, whether that's a good or a bad thing, and they have big, scary chemical names that vegans don't understand. So we don't want to we want to make sure we don't get off the rails here. But the fact is, most wines do not use those those animal products anyway. So they're already vegan. Now, you might see some talking about how hand sorting, as if hand sortings is going to stop a mouse from falling into your wine vat, and therefore your wine had to be thrown out because it wasn't vegan. This is just ridiculous. It's what it is, and it cracks me up. Now I'm going to share something with you guys in the chat here. I want you guys to go ahead and click on it. Click on this link right here. This was found in the Wink website here, and I want you to take a look at this lovely little picture that is focused here. It's got this well manicured hand delicately picking up some grapes on this table full of mirrors and exotic fruits, with a big damned beetle crawling up your papaya. Which, wow, that sounded way less dirty when I wrote it down earlier. But anyway, what the fuck is that beetle doing there? And clearly that's non-vegan. I mean, if that guy's in their wine, I need to know, because, we don't need anything with a face on it, and beetles have faces. But anyway, this picture is used as some sort of example of purity on a website that claims, and I quote, "We hate to be the ones to tell you this." Of course they do. People who are pretentious always hate to be the ones. But if the wine you're drinking doesn't specifically say vegan on the label, it's probably not. Well, your beetle begs to differ, you ass. That is such bullshit. I mean, Lord of mercy. I love that photo. I mean, I'm thinking about making this into some sort of cross stitch or a pillow. It's a very good still life, except that the beetle isn't still, which makes it some sort of other fruit photo. I don't even know how to define this particular piece of art. And Mary says, try to drink your wine. Tina says, let's start a meat wine brand, Moose Merlot. Yes, made by Jen, and harvested on moose back. That's exactly how we'll do it. It'll be that'll be cooperative animal farming thing. And we don't even go into animal farming. That's way too, not in 2020. Just no. The animals can't start to eat back. They start to talk back, and we get things like, all wine is equal, but some wines are more equal than others. Wow, my geek is showing. Anyway, vegan wine is not a thing. I mean, it is a thing. Let me be clear. If you are vegan and this is the way you choose to your dietary practices, good on you. I support you 100%. Do what you want with your body. On the other hand, just because it isn't labeled vegan just means they're not trying to cater to you. This has to go, again, back to that marketing thing. Something I think I read, for $54.5 billion in 2019 was spent on the wellness market. Guys, I want you to think about that number. That's a very, very large number. And that is not small business and little guy marketing. It is 100% aiming right at your sense of purchase and buying things. These brands are marketing towards fear and ignorance. They are marketing towards the idea that you will pay more for a product if you believe that it is somehow unique, special, or differentiated from its market. Wine as a luxury brand is also a natural place for these elements. And we're going to talk next week. We're going to talk about lifestyle marketing in particular. But I want you to think about something. Almost every single brand that I'm looking at here has wines that are on the range at retail price somewhere between, I'd say, $15 to maybe $50. Okay. We've talked about wine prices before. The amount that we're talking that the winery is making at that sale point is anywhere from a few dollars to a dozen. Okay. These are not big, expensive brands. These are not prestigious, high-end, highly allocated, well-respected, highly rated wines. They're just not. I would even argue that without that, they can't even lay much in the way of the label towards craft. Now, remember, you can make great craft wine at an inexpensive price, but the idea that it's going to be a large operation, that it's going to get out much past that, is, you've got to look at some of the bigger industrial places that do make wine on a scale that is commercially viable, that sells in that $20 range, that make vegan, friendly, dry harvested, organically farmed, sustainable vegan wines. They're out there, right? We've talked about Love Block on this show before. It has all those features. I'd love to show you Lang Twins Winery in Lodi, California. A multi-million bottle facility that uses complete sustainability throughout their entire operation. If you don't think that they're doing it in the way that was something that you'd want to put into your body, I think that's just because you're afraid of stainless steel. Right. So it's this type of marketing that I want to defend, especially new to wine drinkers. But even if you're a wine drinker who's been drinking for years, there might be misunderstanding that you have about the way that things are made, or just the claims that somebody makes, because these guys are good. Again, the marketing firms that we're talking about here are not dummies. They know how to get into that little lizard brain of ours, and they work those little things to say, well, that statement is perfectly logical and reasonable, because it is. Many of the statements that they're making, many of the claims that they're making about their products are completely true. They're just held in an isolation so that you cannot also say, so that they're not trying to say, by the way, it's true, the other guys too. Okay, fine. Right? Let's just admit that that type of marketing is not well targeted. So, well, actually, it's well targeted. They're obviously doing business for a reason, but what I mean is, it's not. I don't think it's very genuine. I think that we're going to talk about transparency next time as well, and what that means. But just a short preview there. Seeing all the way through to the little guy, seeing the people that do this stuff naturally and organically anyway, is nothing new. And to act like it is, and to market, to white label, by the way, your wines under your big umbrella, to say, don't worry, trust us. We got these from organically farmed places and they're certified, because here's a third-party certificate that says so, is really disingenuous, and it's very snake oil salesman, and screw that. So anyway, let's get on to the grocery store grab. It's about that time, and I need more wine. So there. So because we're trying to stick with theme, let's talk about a little lifestyle marketing and brand in the grocery store grab. This will give you a little preview of what's going to happen next week. So today's grocery store grab, Skinny Girl, the white color. This is the wine collection. This is their California White, right? Crisp, balanced, says on the front label. We like this. 100 calories, only 100 calories per 5-ounce serving. That is what they are aiming for on the packaging here. So when we talk about the grocery store grab, for those of you that are unfamiliar, grocery store grab is our effort to focus on wines that, for folks, to get your best value per dollar on wines that are found at non-specialty and non-big box retailers. If you happen to be forced to or choose to shop at the grocery store, it can be an interesting wine landscape. And we have a label-focused program where we try and really reward wineries that put good information on their labels and understand what it is that we should be looking for our labels. So, as I said, this week's selection is the Skinny Girl. This was chosen because of the topic for today, because this is very much a lifestyle marketing brand. Obviously, who is their target market? Their target market is women. Their target market is body image. Their target market is 100% people who are calorie conscious. Okay, cool. Right? All of those things fit into this category. The back of their label, every girl needs a go-to wine, and there's no option more accessible than our Skinny Girl, registered trademark, California White. This crowd pleaser is a delicious and complex blend of your favorite white varieties, not listed, with enticing aromas of peach and apricot. It's a little bit crisp, a whole lot luxurious, and only 100 calories per serving. Yes, if this came with a prize in the box, I would find it even cooler. I'm just going to say, or maybe a little crossword on the back. But so marketing. So Real Housewives of whomever may appeal to this wine now. So let's be grocery store honest about this thing. Let's look at what it is, and again, setting aside any prejudices we might have about the way in which they're marketing. Okay, because the only prejudice that I want you guys to have in the way that they're marketing is the sense of, can I trust them to be that what's on the label is true? I think is far more important than the way in which. I think a lot of people market in very silly ways, and each of it appeals to us in different fashions. So, for instance, this is obviously a wine that is marketed on very little information, but mostly on lifestyle choice. That's not uncommon even in luxury brands. I've spoken about this before. For instance, there was when I was at the grocery store and picked this up, I was looking at another wine that I wanted to pick up. But I chose to do that wine as a special. I'm going to buy it. I'll personally review it. It'll be over on Patreon, I think, because it's from the Prisoner Wine Company, and they used to be with Oren Swift, and I like to try their wines. They're very, very popular, but 100% a lifestyle brand. You know, you can tell because this thing talks about its new brand name. It's called Unshackled, this new wine label. And then it says the Prisoner Wine Company, and you roll over to the back label and it says Unshackled by the Prisoner Wine Company. And that's it. The rest of it is FDA marketing requirement. I'm like, how bold do you have to be to just say, it's our wine? You're going to fucking buy it anyway, right? Because they know that you're people who are so image conscious as to have to buy the Prisoner because it makes them feel like a cool kid drinking it, that you're going to do that same thing for them. Okay. So Skinny Girl is that same class, except it's slightly different. They're trying to bring you in with a little bit of marketing. They're not so famous as to go, well, you know who we are. But instead they go, aha, 100 calories. So let's talk about calories in wine real quick. Calories in wine are related to two things: alcohol by volume content and residual sugar, which we talked about earlier. Residual sugar being that left over. Dry styles of wine have less residual sugar by nature. We're talking about dry wine is usually somewhere between basically 15 grams per liter or under. Some say 20, some say 10, but let's call it 15 for fun numbers. 15 or less. So it's already very small. Now, The other thing is alcohol. Okay, so the carbohydrates or sugars that are left over is residual sugar. Alcohol is about 4 times more potent as far as caloric count is concerned as compared to a equal volume of carbohydrates. So alcohol by volume is key here as well. So let's take a look. If one of the things they didn't bother, you'll notice, to put a big point on here is what the ABV of this wine is. Now, let's see. We've got some stamps here. They're gray on white text is difficult to read. Where is your ABV? It's required by law, so I know you have it. Wow, you gotta love people that make it really hard to find. Because here's the deal: alcohol by volume for wines that are going to be on the lower side. By the way, 100 calories per glass is completely average for most dry wines, especially if the wine is less than 13.5% alcohol by volume, what's generally considered low in the industry. 11 is the European standard, but here in the US, we like things a little bit warmer, a little hotter. So 13 or 13.5 is kind of our standard. So I guarantee you, if I bothered to be some sort of micro sleuth and figure this the hell out, I bet you'd find this wine probably in that range. Again, as if saying, making a low alcohol wine, it offers 12%, 0.7% alcohol by volume. Thank you, Tina, for our research division, the unpaid research division there. So Bethany Frankel, a reality pop TV star. Go figure. Well, yeah, Google Foo is great. I mean, remember, I'm only doing this from here. You're seeing me do it live because I'm imagining you should. In fact, no, you shouldn't have to take the time to Google your wine when you're in the damn store. I'm sorry. So just put it on the freaking label. Don't make it hard. So anyway, that's the whole calorie thing. In other words, this is nothing special from that perspective. It is indeed under 13% alcohol by volume. It is a dry style. Congratulations. By doing a wine style, you achieved 100 calories per glass. Yay! You could make those same choices, and I could probably give you half a dozen other examples that would make about the same thing. I also would say that if you strayed much past this, you know how many extra calories you'd get? Like 20 more. That means instead of having 5 glasses, you could only have 4 glasses. Head to desk, the idiocy of that. But anyway, when we count the numbers, every bit matters. I get it. I do. Been there. So, all right, let's talk about the wine itself. Let's talk about the product. So, the product here, we talked about the label a bit. We talked about what's in the bottle. We have no freaking clue. It's a white blend that they did not tell us the grapes for because they assume that you're too stupid to care. They assume that you don't mind and that you don't want to know. Or more importantly, that you'll just keep coming back to their brand because you like the taste and you don't want to maybe have something else that tastes similar. You don't like that. Where are the grapes grown? California. That is as specific as they got. Now, that may be because of AVA rules. In other words, they may not have wines from or grapes from a specific American viticultural area, like, say, Central Coast or Sonoma or Napa or Lodi. But generally, and again, we don't disparage wines that are California labeled in the same sense we don't wines that are labeled as France or Vin de Paille or IGT. This just means that they're going through a bunch of different sources. Usually, by the way, that's a sign that they're looking for good quality at a low price. So I don't hold it against them, although specificity would be nice. I assume that if you can't specify, why wouldn't you be able to say, we bought Sauvignon Blanc from here, Pinot Gris from here, and some Chenin Blanc from over there? Because again, to you, they don't think it's going to matter and they don't want to bother because next year they're going to change that at harvest time, depending on the prices that they get, and they'd have to change the label, and that costs money, and that digs into what your wine price is. Price-wise, by the way, this was $17 listed price before club, $11 after the grocery store card. So this is an $11 wine, right? This is playing within that, just above the really low end, but not yet into handcrafted wines. Okay. So then they've got a few flavor words. Remember, we used words, I believe, like peach and apricot, but that was about it. So that's a good start. No flavor pairings outside that. Remember, skinny girls can't eat with their wine, so therefore food pairings are not necessary. You're going to simply live on this and your eternal shame, and you'll be fine. So anyway, let's go with how it tastes. So, I mean, this is the real bottom line. Does it taste good? If it tastes good, well then, why not, right? On the nose, it doesn't come off with a ton of fruit. It's a medium aroma. Colorization, we're looking at basically kind of an even pale gold. No particular variation to the rim or anything like that. By looking at it, it speaks to light white wine color. It's one of the reasons, by the way, that they have it in this nice clear bottle, is they want you to see that it is nice and clear and light, give your brain that impression that this is a nice light wine. That's cool. That's honesty in packaging. Although I would prefer that they not let all that extra UV light into the bottle, because that has a chance to give light strike, especially if they stay in the fluorescence or out in the sunlight for any length of time. So be wary of that kind of marketing thing, right? It generally means the wines need to turn over quickly, right? You need to be consumed fairly quickly. The other thing that they don't give here, this is another fun thing. This is a non-vintage wine. You couldn't even tell you what year this was from. That, by the way, is something you find a lot in the clean wine movement as well, and we'll bitch about that later. So, not a big aroma, but it does have a little bit, I would say, dried fruits, almost like and again, maybe an apricot or a peach. Not a lot of citrus, or maybe some white floral notes coming off of it. There's an indistinct orange blossom thing going. Kind of nice. Again, very pleasing. A little bit of, it does speak to a little bit of sharpness. I can smell a tiny bit of acid way at the back, and again, it identifies as acid rather than a citrus smell, which is usually a preferable adjective that we want to use. Okay, on the palate, it's a little fleshier than the nose would indicate, which is nice. Comes across with a decent level of I would agree with them on that peach fruit, kind of fleshy, like it's just become ripe. It's very nice on the fruit flavor. The acid stings a bit at first, but then the fruit kind of catches up. So not poorly constructed in that manner. It's definitely a drinkable white wine. But after that little bit of peach fades, there's not much to it. I mean, I wouldn't expect much either. I believe they used the word, that they wanted to say that it was complicated. Oh, it's luxurious. Well, I wouldn't go ahead and call it luxurious. It doesn't have much there. It's just kind of, it's what I would call a quaffer wine. You can sit around and drink this, hang out, do no harm. There's no complaint to it whatsoever. So as far as that is concerned, so we try and answer 3 questions. Is it well executed? Well, that I would say, yeah, that it is a drinkable wine at the price point. It is not stellar, and it's not something that I would scream out to say, oh, you know what I crave? Because the second question, is it on style? My question is, what style? White blends, of course, are normally going to suffer from that because they tend to be the individual winemaker's style choice themselves. But without knowing the grapes that are in this and knowing what we're getting into, it's really hard to determine that question, to say, is this something that I can recommend to somebody that they would enjoy outside? Have you tried California White from Skinny Girl Wines? Okay, it's very unique. Now, by the way, that's probably by design. That's how they market. They don't want to be like anything else. They want to be this ineffable kind of thing. I think that's bad for wine drinkers because it doesn't help them grow. So negative on my point. Is it worth the price tag? Meh. I know better ways to spend $11 on wine. I can give you a white wine that'll blow this away for $11. So no, not really. I mean, I don't think this one. This is not something I can get behind from oh wow, this is really unique and so special that you have to try it, right? I guarantee that if I put this in a blind at a tasting, I don't think that it would get much wild comment as far as being overtly good in any one particular fashion. And from their labeling as well, like I said, the things that they failed on our label thing here is, they didn't give us any varietal information. They didn't tell us what's in the bottle. They gave us 1 or 2 flavor words, which is good. They didn't include anything when it came to food pairings. They didn't tell us, much about much. So, I mean, this is like a C or a C+ at best when it comes to labeling. It's got at least something. It's not just labeled their name, right? It's not a D or an F, but still, afraid there's not much there either. So, afraid that the Skinny White Girl needs to get a little bit more, substance to it before would really rank into into much of the serious wine world. But again, they're not trying to be serious. They've got a market that they're lining in on, and people who think the label is cute and think that they think that it's funny and see the word 100 calorie and are pleased by that are going to focus here, not knowing that 2 bottles over a wine that's the same price from a better producer would be much more their enjoyable product. So how you deal with it. All right. Let's see. No, actually, Mary, I am totally in the right generation. You shouldn't have to do it in the middle of the store. I have Google Foo. Let me tell you. I mean, when I do research and stuff and I want to find out something, I'm all about the Googs. But the only reason I love how mostly I can't make statements of not knowledge here without you guys basically going and Googling it immediately because you're sitting in front of your computers. In other words, believe me, this isn't information I couldn't find out. I'm telling you it's not right in front of me. Or actually, it's technically right beside me, and it's not going to be, I'm not Googling it for you. So again, I do plenty of Googling. The amount of Googling that had to take place for that first part of this show, good Christ. All right. Tina says that I just didn't think I made it up. You could have made it up. I guarantee you, if you made up, it's 12.7% alcohol by volume, and you nailed that ABV, I would be very, very impressed, Tina. I really got to say, that would be cool. So this is $7.49. Would not be surprised either. Like I said, remember, this is grocery store pricing, not big box or specialty store, right? So I would say that at a big box retailer, like someplace like Total Wine, Siegel, Specs, Wine.com, places like that, I would bet that this wine is sub $10. It does not surprise me in any way. The fact that I bought this at my local grocery, though, I mean, they usually tend to bump things up because, again, alcohol helps their bottom line. It's a high margin item that helps them keep their P&L where it needs to be when they're selling, eggs for pennies, for penny profits. So 12%. Yeah, see, mom got it as well with 12%. I love it, but that's that key. So just you guys, here you go. Be armed with your own numbers. Know in your own heads just some basic things. And that is, if it's a dry wine and it's under 13, chances are you're going to be fairly low in calories. Ta-da. Doesn't have to say it on the label. You don't need to be told in the same way that somebody hands you an unsweet tea. They don't have to say it's sugar-free. It's just tea. Right? Doesn't have any gluten in it either. Doesn't have any fat. But if you put all those things on your tea, boy, I bet you it would sell better. Especially if you put a friendly farmer-like face upon it and tell a story. I think that's another thing that I was reading about, though, in the marketing lines about this process and about generational marketing, to speak to Mary's point very specifically. That is, we are in another generation. We're in a 4th or 5th generation marketing world right now where, the Madison Avenue, Mad Men crowd, and really diving into professional, advertising to people, getting inside their brains and figuring out emotional level of marketing has come to several other labels, because now you're talking about a generation that is raised by people who were made conscious of things like about the entire, fake food market and dealing with things like, first off, additive sugars, low sugars, sugar substitute and sugar, non-addeds, let alone high fructose corn syrup, or just any of the what we put in our bodies movement that began in the 60s and 70s. Now we are children of the 60s and 70s. Now we are children of the 70s and 80s, 90s and 2000s that are then, long exposed to this, and the expectation of those things, where those were not special or hard to find, they were everywhere in the marketplace. So information scarcity is not necessarily a good thing. But it's so funny because it has to go so much along with brand and brand identity and how they go. So that whole idea of how and where and when and what you're targeting. It's part of the thing that we talked about for the last couple of weeks with the hard seltzer conversations and the videos that we had there. Hope you guys went and watched them, because one of the reasons that the whole fermented malt beverage movement got out there and did well was because they were putting things on their cans like, hey, it's this many calories, this many carbs, this many per, this per serving, because it's alcoholic water, and I don't care what you say about your natural fruit juices. They were naturally squeezed in a factory. They were not, it's not like they put a squeeze of lime in your thing. They chemically deconstructed that lime and placed it in a milliliter vat and put a drop in. So don't be victim between the art and science. They do not have to be a separate thing. There's a Venn diagram where they cross over, and that in that happiness lies. And we're not going to go in today again about the art versus science, or art versus craft, or art and craft versus science and what's the word I'm looking for? Consistency, and that whole spiel, because I've done that several times in different classes. So we'll save that for others. So anyway, Mark says, my Google says 13.5, about 112 calories. Yeah, that's about right for wine. I mean, again, that whole extra 12 you got out of an extra 1% of ABV. It's interesting to see how the health industry markets wine too. Weight Watchers with a low calorie wine. Absolutely. I mean, because part of it, by the way, one of the other angles that they use in the wellness world, and some of these clean wines are marketing to you as, is this: they want you to live without giving up things. In other words, if the people realize that drinking alcohol and beer and wine and spirits has a calorie cost that they're trying to watch, they suddenly realize that a big portion of their budget was going into those things. So they're looking to indulge themselves by being able to continue to have those, but at less of a cost. It's a natural part of the learning to balance that thing. Cool. That's cool. I support that completely. Again, it's just the idea that it isn't that it wasn't already that the things that you chose were, right? I mean, if you're drinking bourbon and Coke, you're having 150 calories in a 12-ounce serving of Coke is what, 150 calories, plus you're throwing in, juice and a half ounce of bourbon in there at 101 proof. Sure, you're going to be catching 200 calorie drinks, in a heartbeat. You could have 2 glasses of wine for that. Which would you rather? That's what they're offering. Or, hey, just have 1 glass of wine instead of your bourbon and Coke, and now you are happily, you've got none of those things in it, and you're hopefully, you're halfway on your way to your goal. So, like I said, I support everybody's dietary choices. It's not a bad thing, but I think it's very interesting, as Tina points out, that the health industry, for instance, how many times have you seen, healthy wine, drinking a glass of red wine a day, it's got its health benefits, and the clickbait out there that is desperate to tell you that whatever it is that you love or think is indulgent or think you have to give up has actually got a hidden health benefit that scientists found because of blah. I mean, it's just ridiculous, because you pay for a study to aim at what you want it to say, and you can do so. Absolutely. That's the dirty underside of scientific studies, and where they are, how they're actually quoted by the media, because the media doesn't care about actually giving you real information. They just want you to click on their advertising. It is a vicious cycle that feeds on itself of how you're trying to get said real information. But to make the joke of everything in moderation, but moderation, there you go. Again, not bad. The other one that I skipped this week, but maybe I'll pick up for next week. I don't know if it was Skinny Girl or whether it was the Barefoot brand, which I would have to suffer through for you guys. But they're making a pre-made seltzer, a wine seltzer in a bottle, 750 ml format, meaning they're going after people who are seltzer tempted, seltzer curious, and trying to keep them in the wine shop by saying, hey, here's a spritzer. It's one of those, okay, I mean, I get it. There's convenience of simply opening the bottle and pouring, but you could also do the same thing by buying this wine and also buying a bottle of club soda for 79 cents. Problem solved. By the way, really mix it up. Get crazy church crazy. Throw in a little La Croix. Now you've got pamplemousse La Croix with a spicy peach twist. It's so fantastic. You'll be the belle of the ball with your very own custom mixed flavory water. with wine in it. So there. Do not suffer for us. I do not suffer for you, Mary and David. I suffer for my art. And believe me, I'm actually curious. But I mean, it is a clinical and professional curiosity. As I just said in the spritzer video, though, in the second one, hey, here's how to make them. They're not hard. I mean, understanding some simple ratios. The heavier the wine, the more spritzer you put in there. But honestly, it's the ultimate example of a amount to taste. Right? You just decide how strong you want the wine flavor to be, and you add the according volume of soda water. And if it happens to be flavored soda water, well, then jam on. I think that's really cool. So it may or may not have happened here at the house during the filming of said video. Because when you have to get rid of a wine you don't particularly like, you can easily, get your way through it with a shot of Waterloo Blackberry Seltzer. A little gnome told me that. But maybe that's what I'll do. I've got their Clementine Orange caffeinated seltzer waters plus Skinny White Girl. Then you could have a wired Skinny White Girl. That'd be awesome, right? It's just, I've got these all day. We can keep running with them. So if you want to experiment in the world of these things, it is not that hard. But and that's why I don't necessarily think you need to worry about people selling and marketing to you as the packaging being the only important deal. So, all right, let's see what else have I got for you. Coming soon. Actually, before we get there, any other questions or topical things or otherwise? You guys have had various chat opinions, but do you guys have any other specific questions that you'd like me to address? Shannon Hops, ladies and gentlemen, what's the proper amount for a glass? Meaning how many ounces? Are you talking about a glass of wine? Standard at pour is 5 ounces. I always feel like I'm pouring too much in a glass, even though I probably am. So a wine bottle, generally speaking, has 25.37 fluid ounces of wine, 750 milliliters. I may have got that last point something wrong, but it's about 25 ounces of wine per bottle. And therefore, 5 ounces equals 5 glasses per bottle. Generally speaking, in the U.S. or in the U.S. restaurant industry, we pour a little heavier, about 5.2, 5.3. We get about 4 glasses per bottle. So, by the way, I'm the same way. I tend to pour as much as I feel. But you know me, I've spoken before about commitment. And the fact is, if you're going to open a bottle of wine, be prepared to finish it. Don't be afraid of commitment. So there. I mean, therefore, the amount just depends on how long I want it to last. And actually, even that, my sipping rate matters as much as anything else. When things are like whites and rosés, where they have a temperature fluctuation, I tend to pour smaller so that they keep the wine cool. If it's a big red, I might be taking one of these. So this point in this glass is right about 2 ounces, 2.5 ounces. Right? I usually pour a glass of just a little bit higher than that. So I'm probably getting about 5 ounces, 6 ounces of glass. So, and the answer is, does it even matter? And the answer is only to you. And this, I would recommend this. The reason that these glasses are so much larger than their portion size is to give that aroma capture. It's so that I can swirl the wine around and I'm capturing that aroma in that space so that when I smell, I can appreciate flavor. And remember, that's not something we just do at the beginning. We only make an extra effort during the wine tasting process to take that big inhale. But the fact is, every time you put the wine glass to your face, you're smelling the wine because it's part of your tasting process. It's how your wine tastes good. So there you go. Sipping rate is determined by the stress of the day. That is exactly right. Mary and David are correct in that the sipping speed has everything to do with freaking the rest of the week. Goodness, it's Wednesday already, people, but it's September. That's awesome. So speaking of September, what's coming up in September? Friday show. It is the Summer Sunset Show. Fall is just around the corner. And we are going to say, as we say goodbye to summer, with some tasty food treats that always remind me of the end of summer. Can anybody say crab cakes with horseradish cream? I think I shall. With some awesome whites. We're going to be taking up some Tavel, some of the original rosé from Northern Rhone, which is, I may or may not have test-driven a bottle with some smoked turkey, courtesy to a Cicerone friend of mine. It was fucking awesome. Anyway, so it's pretty awesome. It's going to be fun. We're going to have two wines and 2 different foods. We're going to have some baked camembert and pears, and It's a great wine plus show. So you get a little bit more than just wine service. Although everybody tends to pair stuff with their own wines anyway, whether we're doing wine and cheese, wine plus, or whatever. This is more like a guided affair. And I provide recipes are in the actual Evite. So you can see that over on eventbrite.com. So we're going to talk about more clean wine next week. We're going to talk about farming, wine production methods, marketing, and lifestyle. We're going to talk about those four items when we talk about more clean wine next week. Then for the rest of the month on online participation tastings, we've got Cabernet Franc, a personal favorite of mine. We got wine and cheese on a Saturday this week, or this month rather. So the 15th of this month, we're going to do a Saturday tasting for wine and cheese part 4. We're specifically focusing on milk and what milk makes cheese and how it's different. And then last show of the month is the Mambo Italiano show, Italian wine classics. So we're going to do a wine style show with 3 different classic Italian wines. So awesome stuff all the way through the month. October will be coming up here pretty soon. So get your tickets. Join me. So much fun to be had. Mary says, then Minnesota fall is here. We're harvesting the garden as we speak. That is awesome. This is what we call our false fall right now, because we got a little bit of rain and we got it cool. So it's harvest moon. Gotta love it. Yeah, it was through the clouds. Shannon is very right. I'm not sure that we'll quite get there, but first full moon of the September. I'm loving it. So in closing, go ahead. I know you guys have been commenting here in the chat, but I always love people to get your comments in the comments section of YouTube down when you have a chance. Go ahead and tell me, when did you eat your first vegan, and how clean are you when you drink wine? If you like what we're doing here, like and subscribe to the channel. Share with a wine-loving friend. If you really like what we're doing, check us out over on Patreon. There's exclusive content over there. We've got unique things that you can't find, and an entire library of wine classes with yours truly. All of the tastings that we do online together are recorded for posterity, so you can go back and watch and learn at your own pace. And I wouldn't quite call it a master class because I'm not there yet, but hey, it's a pretty darn fun class if you ask most of my friends. So anyway, I love you guys. Thank you guys so very much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. I hope to see you guys on Friday. And until next time, Wine and Cheese Plus on the 20th. I think you may be right, because the 12th is the Saturday. It's the 19th, is I believe is the correct date for the Wine and Cheese show. But it is a Saturday. That's what's the important part. Okay, so it's not a Friday. So anyway, as I said, miss you guys and hope you're doing well. Until next time, I'm your WineShark. Cheers.